Intellect is knowing a tomato is fruit, and wisdom is knowing it does not belong in a fruit salad. I've been thinking about that line a lot over the last few weeks because I walked into a super messy situation. It's one of the messiest situations I've seen in a business in a long time. It was a room full of genuinely brilliant people. I mean, real problem solvers. I mean, these are high performers, the kind of people who build things that actually work. And they could not solve this problem. Not because they lacked the brain power, but because the brain power itself was getting in the way. Every single one of them had built an airtight case for why they were right. And not one of them can answer one simple question. So here's the setup. I'm working with this engineering firm, and it's a tight team. They've been working together for a long time. Everybody's sharp. The technical staff, the operations people, the admin people. It's a driven, get stuff done kind of culture. And then something blows up, and it doesn't. I mean, the specifics aren't really matter because the details are not the point. And the fact that they were focused on the details is part of the problem. What matters is that suddenly there's this chaos everywhere. People are talking about quitting. There's discord between just about everybody. And just the whole culture is just fracturing, just falling apart. So I come in and start talking to people one by one. And here's what I've learned. Every single person has a case. I mean, a detailed, well-organized, evidence-backed case for why they are right and the other person is wrong. They've got timelines, they've got receipts, they've got screenshots. They're saying things like, let me give you the context on that email, right? They're all like prosecutors building their case for the jury. So I ask each person the same question. Okay, I hear you. Now tell me what's your part in this. And this is where it gets really interesting because a few of the people can actually see it. They pause, they get a little uncomfortable, maybe even a little tearful, and they say something real. But some people genuinely cannot answer the question. And it's not because they're hiding anything, I don't think. And maybe they don't trust me yet. I don't know, it's possible. But I think it's more likely they really don't see it. And the smarter the person is, the harder it seems to be for them. Because they've already built such a convincing case that there's no reason to turn the lens around on themselves. Here's the thing about being really smart in a conflict like this. All it really gives you is a better defense. That's what the intellect is doing in these moments. It's acting like a defense attorney. It's not helping you solve the problem. It's helping you win the argument. And there's a massive difference between those two things. Think about how much energy goes into being right. You're replaying conversations. You're mentally drafting your rebuttal. You're collecting evidence, rehearsing what you should have said and what you'll say next time. That is an enormous amount of cognitive energy, and it's all pointed in one direction, which is proving that the problem lives somewhere outside of you. And here's the really, really interesting part. Smart people are better at this than anyone because they can connect the dots, build the narratives, and sequence events in a way that makes their version of reality feel like the only possible interpretation. And the smarter you are, the more convincing the case becomes, which makes it harder for anyone, including you, to poke a hole in it. So you end up with a room full of brilliant people who are all holding bulletproof cases. They're all absolutely certain they're right, and nothing's getting fixed. Zero progress is being made because everyone's prosecuting and nobody's repairing. Let me give you a perfect example of this. I talk to everyone involved and I say, just hold, don't do anything. Give me time to talk to each person before anyone makes a move. Everyone agrees.
because it makes sense. Everyone knows the emotions are high. And then I get a panicked message from one of them. One of the key people just had an hour-long text conversation with another key person about the conflict. And an hour-long text conversation, yes. And someone's quitting. And a key person is quitting. I'm trying to understand what happened because everyone agreed to hold. And the answer is pretty simple. The need to be right couldn't wait. And text is the perfect medium for that need if you think about it. Text lets you edit before you send, so you can craft your argument and control the narrative. You don't have to listen to the other person and hear their voice break, and you don't have to sit with the silence after you say something hard. Text is basically prosecution without any of the vulnerability. You would never have an hour-long conversation about whether someone should quit if you were sitting across from each other, because in person, if you were face to face, you'd have to be a human being and feel the weight of what's happening. But over text, you can be a lawyer, you can be cold, you can be a robot. You can build your case in real time, hitting send and feeling righteous about it. That's not communication. That's two people like building cases at each other through a screen. And here's what really gets me about this. The wise move was to do nothing. I asked everyone to hold, and holding was the right call. Intelligence is figuring out the best possible response, and wisdom is recognizing that sometimes the best response is no response at all. This person absolutely had the intellect to craft a compelling argument over text. They did. And they proved that by doing exactly that for an hour, but the wise thing, the thing that would have actually served them and everyone else, was to just sit with the discomfort and wait. And they couldn't do it because the pull to be right was stronger than the wisdom to be still. So let's talk about what being right actually cost you, because it's not free. When you win the argument, you lose the relationship often. Every time someone chooses being right over being curious, something dies. Whether that's trust or goodwill or the benefit of the doubt. When you win the argument, nothing actually gets fixed because the real problem, the thing underneath the conflict, hasn't been touched. All you've done is establish who's at fault, and congratulations. but the building is still on fire. When you win the argument, you succeed in staying stuck, because being right is a position, and positions don't move. If I'm already right, then I don't need to change anything, which means nothing changes, right? Being right is one of the most expensive things you can buy. And smart people can afford more of it than anyone else just because they're so smart. And here's the deeper thing that I think most people don't see. Being right isn't really about the argument at all. It's about safety. If I can prove that I'm right, that I don't have to feel the discomfort of wondering whether I contributed to whatever mess I'm in. If I can prove that you're wrong, I don't have to sit with the vulnerability of maybe being part of the problem, right? That airtight case is not a legal strategy. It's a protective mechanism. It's armor. And smart people build better armor than anyone else, which is the real tragedy here. The same intelligence that makes you brilliant at your job, makes you brilliant at defending yourself from the one thing that can actually help you, which is the truth about your own part in it. That's the intellect-wisdom gap. The intellect builds the case, and wisdom is what allows you to put it down. Now here's the counterintuitive part. And this is really what I want you to walk away with today. There's enormous value in being wrong. More accurately, there's enormous value in being willing to say, this is at least partially my fault. Because the moment one person in any kind of conflict can do that, the whole thing changes. The whole dynamic shifts. The temperature drops, and the other person's defenses have space to start to come down because they don't have to fight anymore. Think about it from the other side for a second. You're in some sort of conflict with somebody. You're armed to the teeth with your case, and you're ready. You're ready for battle. And then the other person says, you know what? I think I made this worse, and here's how. What do you do with that? Where does your case go? It probably softens, maybe even dissolves, because the case was designed to fight. And when the other person's not fighting, there's nobody to fight. That's the power of owning your part. And it's not weakness or surrender, it's strategy and it's wisdom. And it's the thing that actually unlocks the situation. And it's probably true. When everybody is huddled up and turtled in and fighting for their rightness, nothing gets accomplished. And no progress gets made because everyone is spending all of their energy on prosecution instead of repair. But when one person puts the case file down and says, let me tell you what I see about my part of this. Now you're somewhere, now you can actually move. So here's what I want to offer you. The next time you're in a conflict and you feel that pull to build the case, I want you to notice how good you are at it. Notice how quickly the evidence assembles and how satisfying it feels to be right? And then ask yourself what it would cost you to be wrong. Not wrong about everything, not wrong about the facts, but wrong about where the problem actually lives. What if the problem is only out there? What if some of it is in here? Because the energy you're spending building your case is energy you are not spending on fixing the problem. The smartest thing you can do in a conflict is not to build a better argument, but to put the argument down entirely. And sometimes putting it down means literally doing nothing. Intelligence will always give you a next move, a response, like a response to craft, a point to make, a conversation to initiate. But wisdom knows that sometimes the next right thing is to not do anything at all, to just sit with it and let the dust settle before you act. That takes more strength than any argument you could build. Intellect is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing it doesn't belong in a fruit salad. A room full of the smartest people I've ever worked with couldn't solve a problem that a little bit of wisdom would have handled in an afternoon. And it wasn't because they were dumb, they weren't, but because they were brilliant and their brilliance was pointed in the wrong direction. Smart is building the case, wise is putting it down. And I'll say one more thing that I think is really important here. And this comes from years of doing this work. It seems to me that the smarter someone is, the more competent and effective and educated they are, the more they need this kind of emotional and relational development work. Call it therapy, call it coaching, or call it doing the inner work. It doesn't matter. Label it however you want to. The people who are the most capable in their professional lives are often the one with the biggest gap when it comes to understanding themselves and how they show up in relationships. And that makes sense because when you're really good at what you do at your profession, nobody ever pulls you aside and says, "Hey, you might want to work on the emotional side of things. Your competence becomes a kind of pass that lets you skip that part of your development until it catches up with you in moments exactly like the one I just described, until something blows up. If you're in one of these right now, whether it's at work or at home or just in your own head, I promise you that the case isn't helping you, no matter how good it is. Try putting it down. See what happens.